First of all, thank you all so much for a wonderful 2 days. Have you guys had fun? You know, to quote every person probably over the age of 25 here, I wish we had this when we were younger. um, so a bit about me, guys. My name's Corey Tutt. I'm a proud Gamilaroi man. I grew up in a place called Nowra, and I've worked in the STEM industry now, for many, many years, since I was a teenager actually. And I started my career as a zookeeper, where I fed a 4-metre crocodile named Johnny and his girlfriend Dawn. And I've said this joke way too many times over the last 2 days, but because they were a bit snappy. And from there, I ended up becoming an alpaca shearer, where I learned all different sorts of STEM, like rebuilding electric handpieces and wool classing and all different sorts of things. But then I started working in the labs with rodents and frogs, African clawed frogs as well, which, if you want to know what an African clawed frog can do, it can actually regenerate most of its body except for its brain. So if it loses a leg, it can regrow it. If it loses a liver, it can regrow it. And it's kind of like a memory stick full of cells. So I got to look after them for many years, which is pretty cool. And the reason why they can do that is because African clawed frogs live inside the footprints of elephants in Africa. So when large animals leave huge footprints, they live inside those little muddy footprints as well. So I started Deadly Science back in 2018, and this is my second time speaking at this wonderful event. And as you can see, my voice is going, not by my intention, but I really enjoy coming and speaking to you guys and meeting all these amazing young people who love STEM and love science, amazing community leaders as well. You guys are so lucky to be surrounded by such amazing older Aboriginal people that are just so passionate about your education as well. So just give them a clap for a minute. I want to tell you guys a yarn, a really funny yarn. So this year's NAIDOC week theme was for our elders, right? And I want to tell you a bit about my childhood. I grew up with one parent, so I grew up with my mum. And my mum was, my mum had a lot of issues, but she was also a very good mum. She kept a roof over our heads. And it was about 2020, and I got this email, and it said, you're nominated for Young Australian of the Year. And I thought it was a joke. I actually ignored the email. They rang me 3 times and said, you better pick up the phone because this is a serious thing. I thought it was like one of those jokes, when the Nigerian prince offers you $80 million. Not falling for it again. But for me, I ended up bringing my mum along to those awards, and I'm going to get into trouble here, but our former premier was called Gladys Berejiklian, and I have a chicken called Gladys Berejiklian, and also Henny Wong, Julie Gizzard, Anastasia Palais. And I always, when I tell this story, I always get in trouble because I always say Gladys Berejiklian instead of Gladys, the politician. They're both equally as greedy and corrupt. But I handed my mum my honour roll and I said, Mum, this is yours because you deserve to see your kids do well, and all our elders deserve to see us do well, and that's what they want. And from that moment, when I started Deadly Science and this logo was drawn on a napkin in a pub, and never in my wildest dreams would I think last year that it would feature on a Formula One car, or Lewis Hamilton would care about Deadly Science, or care about our people, or Barack Obama would know what Deadly Science was. But I got to meet them all this year. But those people, although very inspiring, they're not who inspire me. Yesterday I ran a workshop where kids designed a waterproof pillow. Or I ran a workshop today where kids came up with an idea to help people with autism navigate around the STEM world and make life easier for them. And from that moment, I kind of realized that our future's in really good hands, because the best scientists in this country and the best scientists of all time have always come with a hypothesis to make the world a better place. And you guys all have that in you. So I just want you guys to give yourselves a round of applause. So on the theme of First Nation scientists, I'd be amiss to not acknowledge some of our amazing Indigenous scientists that we've got. Misty Jenkins, who's a cancer researcher working at the Walter Elizabeth Institute. She's the only known Indigenous person working on cancer research in Australia at the moment. And please take a photo of this lady, because I want you guys to aspire to be like Misty, because it's really, really important. This is my good friend Taylor Griffin, who's an ambassador of Deadly Science. And she's the first ever Indigenous aerospace engineer. And she's working for Boeing. But she's following in great footsteps. Because on our $50 note, we have David Unayapon, who you guys have obviously all been learning about at different stages. But in this crowd here today, I can guarantee you there's another Misty Jenkins here, there's another Taylor here, there's another David Unayapon here, another inventor. But what we've got to be is we've got to be our own champions. We've got to champion each other, and we've got to really celebrate being creative. So if you've got a cool idea, don't be scared to share it. Don't be scared to share your light. And don't be scared to bring people along with you. When I started Deadly Science, I knocked on every single professor's door at the University of Sydney, and they all shut in my face except for two. And those two people helped me navigate the space of academia so I can give back to you today. So all you need is one person to believe in you, and that idea can take you so far. I should just carry it with me, right? That was smart. So I'm going to talk about passion and purpose at the moment. So I want to share with you guys, I'm working on this really cool project at the moment. So when I was a kid, I always used to pick up pieces of tin, and I don't want you guys to do that because I don't want to get sued, but just hypothetical, visualize it, use VR, you know. I used to pick up pieces of tin and find blue-tongued lizards everywhere. And I remember when I was a kid in Tumby Bay and Port Lincoln and Lightning Ridge, I used to do these reptile shows for other kids my age, where I'd charge them $1 or 50 cents, and I'd talk about these reptiles, and I'd give them all these facts. But I'd run off and I'd read my reptile books, so I'd memorize them all. I always said, my first book was called Reptiles in Colour by Dr. Harold Cogger. Now, he's a non-Indigenous herpetologist who's now in his 90s, and he produced books back in the 80s and 70s. But we don't really have books for our kids to celebrate reptiles and celebrate their real names. And what I mean by their real names, who here's heard of a death adder? Who's heard of a brown snake? So if I was to tell you that a brown snake doesn't always come in brown, that can come in black, that can come in white, that can come in yellow. A tiger snake doesn't always have stripes. A death adder isn't known as a death adder. Actually, the first classification from a European in Australia of a death adder was spelled as in deaf, as in can't hear. And then over the years, it was misspelled into deaf. But actually, they're not actually an adder either. Genetically, they're related to they're an elapid, which is related to the cobra or the brown snake. It's just that Europeans thought they looked like an adder. And unfortunately, Europeans have a way of naming our animals after what they look like, but often they're completely wrong. But traditional language names are really important to revitalise because they're more inclined scientifically to what they are. So I've started this massive project where I'm working with 100 reptiles, and I'm finding their species names, and I'm turning that into a reptile book. And hopefully when I come back next year, you guys will all get to see it. And I'll make sure I put you in the acknowledgements, okay? So in wrapping up, I was really lucky that animals were my passion, but mostly for all of you, and some unsolicited advice, because I didn't hear you ask me to give it, so it's fine. I'll say this: if you have a passion, or if you don't have a passion yet, both that answer is okay. I'm not here to go tell you to do STEM. I'm telling you you can. And that's the most important message that I'll give you today. But I will say this: passions can change. My passion used to be about reptiles and telling people about reptiles, and now it's helping deadly scientists find theirs. So be prepared, life changes, careers change, and most importantly, stay deadly.